All right, well, welcome to the SHAWSTRENGTH podcast. I'm here with none other than Stan the Rhino Efferding. He's here in Colorado, and we had a great, fun, kind of more relaxed training session today. But
fun for you.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun, man. I mean, I'm really happy to have you here, Stan, and it's neat to be able to sit down and record this podcast. And we're just gonna kind of fly from the cuff and have some fun. I asked earlier on Instagram for some questions, so we'll try to throw a couple of those in. But anyway, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. It was a light day for you, so I was maxing out, but it's still.
Yeah, Stan was definitely much more vascular than me and won that easily. So we had a lot of fun. But anyway, I think we'll jump in. Stan has you've done, God, I don't know how many different podcasts and different things, and been asked a ton of questions. And I 100% know that you are a wealth of knowledge and can speak just about on anything for a very long time. So let's kind of jump into, obviously we've worked together now for, since December, I think, is when I initially reached out about getting on the vertical diet and having you help me kind of make some changes. And that was kind of our first contact. Of course, we've talked before that and known each other for a long, long time. But, it's kind of a point in time where I needed to make a change with my diet. And I'd kind of been following, the same kind of diet for a number of years. And I felt like it wasn't working as well for me, and that I was just putting on more body fat and getting heavier and not really getting the return from the foods I was eating. And the big point that sold me, honestly, and I don't know if I ever told you this, was the digestion part of it. And I just was constantly on the toilet, miserable, felt bloated, felt like I couldn't digest the foods I was eating. And I actually listened to, I believe it was something you did with Mark Bell, where you were really, really hitting on the digestion points. And I was like, I need this in my life. I need to not be basically married to the toilet every single day, And so I reached out to you, and that's kind of where we started. So
yeah, well, I'm glad you said it, because I've made a habit now bouncing around the country at my seminars, ratting you out.
Oh, great! Yeah,
yeah, and talking about eating on the toilet, which your wife shared with me. And the neat thing about that is that I understand that. I lived that. I've been through it, and as have a lot of powerlifters, strongmen, people generally trying to gain weight. They just say a calorie is a calorie. And it's a bit of a catch-22, because if you don't get the calories in, you lose weight and you lose strength, period. And so that's the priority, is getting the calories in. And it's not until you step back and realize that the problem is when people try and fix their digestion or improve their diet, they end up eating a whole lot fewer calories and lose weight and strength, because they try and eat chicken, or they try and avoid maybe the fast food or the pizza, the high-calorie items. And it's really hard to eat a lot of calories clean.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was one of the big things that we talked about, is being able to consume all the food necessary, which is a lot more food.
Sure.
And when it's clean. And by clean, I just mean that foods that don't cause distress to your stomach. And so we went through, and I gave you a list of stuff that I thought was probably major contributors to that. And people who are familiar with the vertical diet know by now that we eliminated vegetable oils, we eliminated breads, pasta, pizza, those kinds of things that are really hard to digest, even oatmeal, in the kinds of quantities that you need to eat them. Yeah. Oatmeal can be healthy in a small amount for certain people, sure, if they can digest it. But we had to go with a carbohydrate, because you have to take in a ton of carbs, that didn't bother your stomach.
Sure.
And so, we tried to build a diet that was healthy first, with the understanding that we need to be able to eat enough of this food to maintain your weight.
Yeah.
And that was hard to do. And so two of the key things that have been helpful is one, the Monster Mash.
Oh, Monster Mash is life.
Yeah. And it's just because
basically,
you couldn't chew enough steak to get the calories in without your teeth hurting and without satiating yourself. And You just can't eat enough of those calories. That's why people who go on a just a steak diet end up losing weight. They end up at a calorie deficit because it's so hard to eat that much.
Yeah.
And so we tried to design a meal plan that gave you all the calories you needed without hurting your stomach. So we went, you got the meat grinder.
Yes, absolutely.
And you went to Costco and you got your top sirloin and you ground it and you added it to the rice and then the bone broth.
Yep.
Which not only helps with digestion, but it made the food easier to eat. Because each of your meals has to be 1,200 plus calories. There's just no way for you to get enough calories in a day.
Yeah.
And you can't do it with chicken breast by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's a huge quantity of food.
It is.
Certainly, and I think that's a major point. I think when people think about it and eating, and we talk about it, a lot and this type of thing, but it really has to be regimented in order to get down all of the food. Because for me, I can't miss a meal and then come back and say, I'll just double up the next one. It's impossible.
No,
it's
you
just,
eat 3,000 calories at one meal, not without causing distress to your
yeah,
stomach,
yeah.
Whether it be acid reflux or indigestion, diarrhea. And so a lot of folks, they keyed in on, the meat and rice.
Yep.
But we also built a pretty solid foundation. I always said you can't put a 3-bedroom house on a 2-bedroom foundation or a skyscraper on on a 2-bedroom foundation. So I was very diligent about getting you the micronutrients that you needed. Yep. We had to make sure you had the sodium and the potassium. We had to make sure that you had all of your vegetables and your vitamins and minerals. But we can't stuff a bunch of broccoli or cauliflower in you because it bloats you and gases. And so we picked low-gas vegetables. The spinach primarily was one of the huge ones to get enough potassium in you.
Yep.
And that was something that I don't think most people focused on. You certainly didn't really historically think potassium.
Sure.
And someone your size with your workload, as much as you sweat, that's a significant component. But nobody realizes how important potassium is, particularly in relationship to sodium for performance, for cramping, for energy, for digestion, constipation, heart arrhythmias, even insulin sensitivity, because potassium binds with or glucose to store glycogen. So it's necessary for so many different components. And I remember you were having some problems with cramping, or you felt a little muscle weakness.
Yeah,
that comes from potassium deficiency. And
it was definitely a little bit of weakness there, and we, there's been some adjustments.
Yeah.
And I think that talking to you initially, and reading a lot of the articles that you sent over, once we started getting into the diet and reasons for different things, because it's something that I'm fascinated by, and I think that there's a lot of misconceptions in the fitness world about sodium in particular.
Yeah.
Huge misconceptions. And I was, because of what people have told me before and that type of thing, like I was part of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you need to really limit the salt and, be careful how much sodium I'm having. And that kind of came in and that kind of opened a new door for me.
Yeah.
And then, all, like you said, all the micronutrients, making sure that everything was on par and what I needed to have. And, it's been, certainly a balance, but I think initially, and like we kind of going back to my initial point, was once I started eating all the foods, it was amazing how my body shifted and how my digestion shifted. So it went from, hey, like I said, I'm living on the toilet basically and just in distress, feeling like crap. And I just had accepted that, okay, as a strength athlete, I'm
suck it
shoving,
up.
You just do it.
Yeah.
You just do it. Every day I wake up, I'm struggling to get this food down. I have to do it. And then you go and that's your life. That's literally what you're living every single day. So it was such an eye-opening thing for me to be able to eat large quantities of food, not have the distress on the digestive system, and be able to then come back and get hungry for the next meal. And it turned into where I could almost feel my body turning into a machine.
Yeah.
That where I was hungry and hungry and
your
hungry.
insulin sensitivity was improving, your nutrient partitioning was improving. When I watched your video, it's been over a year ago, you posted the video on, I think it was like the 10,000 calorie day on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's got like over 1 million hits and everybody was watching that. I saw something very different when I watched that video. People were fascinated by it. I saw the exhaustion.
Yeah.
and I know how tiring it is to try and eat that much food, particularly when it's that types of food that you were eating. I saw that. And you were never hungry. You were always forcing yourself to eat.
Yeah.
And one of the neat things to hear you say after we started working together is, I'm hungry again.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful feeling,
Yeah.
that you know you can time your meals, you can get all of them in. So that was a big deal, something we worked on right away. Improving insulin sensitivity is a huge component of that and your gut health. So.
Yeah, and we've, like, you know, you and I have talked through this process, and you know, one of the things I think, you know, that we had to play with is, you know, initially the fat was very low for what I was eating, and I was eating, like you said, a lot of the mash, and it was basically sirloin, the ground bison was the heart of, you know, the protein, and I was doing a lot of that.
And the top sirloin's a lean meat.
Yeah.
It's a lower fat meat,
Yeah.
you're right. And you had a significant body composition change. You lost like 16 pounds of fat. Your DEXA scan year over year from 2017 to 2018, Arnold, was crazy. And for the first time, at least that I'm aware of, you posted a pic on social media with your shirt off and looked savage. And I felt really good about that, because that you know, the confidence that instilled, the fact that you'd lost all that body fat and you just looked fucking freakish.
Yeah.
But then what happened?
Yeah. So I think that initial part needed to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that I was on the right track, and then it kind of got to a point where we needed to add more fat in.
Yeah.
And so we've switched up now.
Well, how did that come about? You called me up one day and
I felt like I wasn't getting, I just wasn't feeling full.
Yeah.
You know, like my muscles were just not feeling full.
and you got under a 1,200-pound yoke.
Yeah.
And you said you didn't have that fifth gear, that extra power that you felt like you needed. You felt a little unstable under the weight.
Exactly. Yep.
And immediately we switched gears, and what did we throw in?
And then went to the ribeye.
Yeah.
So
Such a simple change.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I started grinding that up, putting it in the mash, making burgers out of it. And that was amazing. That took probably, I would say, 2 days. 2 to 3 days.
I remember, but I mean, 3 days later,
and I was
like,
texting you and just saying, like, holy cow, this was amazing. It's such a good change for me.
And that's the thing. You can copy and paste any diet, whether it be for gaining weight or losing weight or competition and stuff. But really, you got to get constant feedback. You know, and I always send you messages and say, how do you feel? How's the digestion? How's your energy levels? How's your strength? I want to get, you know, in and under all of this and find out how you're doing. And it was such a simple little change. We just realized you needed more fats, and you needed about 10 more pounds of weight. You had lost 16 or 20 in our efforts to try and get your insulin sensitivity corrected. And just all we did was switch from top sirloin to a fattier ribeye, and we throw in a little bacon.
Yes, a little bit of bacon, which I had not had since December, I think.
Right.
You know, so that was a big change, but it was amazing how just like you said, shift gears a little bit, change it up, and it's not going to be you know, like you said, you can't copy and paste exactly. Like for me, this is just what I needed to kind of get that going, and my body after the composition changes and a lot of the things we've been able to do, I just needed that.
Yep.
And so it was neat to see, you know, through this process how I think we're really getting it dialed in now. I really am happy with where I'm at. I'm feeling really good with the training and recovery and everything that goes into it. So, I mean, it's been a fun change. I mean, a lot of people have asked me about it, and I think, you know, over the years, I studied some nutrition in college. It was not something where I came into strongman without knowing anything about protein or carbs or anything. And so you kind of go off of that, and I got myself, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but I mean, I was basically self-coach, self-nutrition, self-everything up until the point of winning World's Strongest Man. I mean, I was third. I tied for first in 2010, and then 2011 I won the Arnold, doing my own nutrition plan, own everything, and then I didn't start working with a nutritionist until right before World's Strongest Man in 2011, but at that point I was already at that level. So, you know, coming in and making some changes, I'm not saying we didn't do some good stuff together, but at the same time it was definitely the considerations to the digestion and the way that I was processing the foods I was eating were not taken into consideration. And I, like you said, it's just, I think a lot of strength athletes, you know, or people out there are just like we said earlier, calories a calorie, just shove it in, just eat it.
And I got to say, on both ends, it is the most important component.
Yeah.
whether you're dieting or whether you're trying to gain weight. The calorie equation is still the most significant component, and you can get a long ways for a long time just staying at a surplus. But then, like you said, you're battling a whole host of things that those considerations aren't made when you do things like just macros. And immune system, digestive health, even things like energy can be dramatically impacted. Micronutrients, which I think are far more important than macronutrients. But calories first, quality of food, meal timing, supplements. It's kind of, it goes down from there in terms of what the priorities are. And you mastered the calories, there's no question.
Yeah.
It did you well for a long time.
Yeah.
But I also noticed you tore a hamstring in 2017 at the World's Strongest Man, hamstring or glute.
I did, hamstring,
And a lot of times that happens with micronutrient deficiencies, sodium and potassium in particular. You subject yourself to those kinds of things. And this year, we'd remedied that, and you didn't, you felt better. We also had to contend in Manila with the humidity and the heat.
God. Yeah, that was.
And so we had to create a hydration protocol for you. That was effective. And so this year we really focused on before every event and after every event and all day long, salting your Monster Mashes throughout the day, taking in your half teaspoon of salt before the event along with some carbohydrates. And a lot of that information came to us when we reached out to Dr. Sandra Grodick's department at the Heat Institute. I don't pretend to have invented any of this stuff. I'm just the guy who's scoured the earth and listened to the best advice from the best professionals and paid them, to learn this information and passed it along. And remember, Livingston from the Heat Institute got involved and talked about the sweat test and trying to design a protocol based on your sweat rate. So there's really beyond calories, that sodium, potassium, even while you're training. Competing, of course, it's paramount. So you didn't have any of those kinds of, you went into the events with the torn tendon in your foot. But while you were there, you didn't experience any of that, the cramping or the muscle.
No, I didn't have cramping. I felt like I was as hydrated as I possibly could be given the circumstances. So it, all that stuff. I mean, it plays so much into competitive performance and as a strong man, a big guy in that type of climate, it's huge. And it's amazing how, in years past I was doing things a lot differently. And I could, for example, just slamming Gatorades and that type of
Too
thing.
much sugar, not enough salt.
Exactly.
And it kind of causes the opposite problem. You're not solving the hydration.
I was drinking sometimes, other contests, 20 or 30 of those a day. And still not peeing.
And they're horribly deficient in sodium.
So I was actually making
and no
myself
potassium.
worse.
You're making yourself worse.
And you think differently, but it's like little things like that. It's amazing how eye-opening it can be. So it's going to be. It's going to be neat to see how we can progress and where we can go. And it's. I have to say, it's a movement that you've created, you've started. And it's been neat to watch. It's been neat to watch and neat to talk to you and neat to experience it myself. And to be able to kind of open those doors up and from a performance perspective, it's been neat to go through it. And I still think, we've got some ground to cover. I think we've got some things to still kind of get a little bit more dialed in or whatever. But I think it's going to be fun. So I know that people wanted to hear about that. About my diet and how I got started and all that. But I want to get more into what makes Stan Efferding tick. That's what I want. I'm always fascinated by that. I'm more there has to be. You have been successful in so many areas of your life. What's the driving? What's the fire? Like, where did all that come from that made you strive to be so successful and to go down all those paths?
Boy, it's hard to say. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be a very, very wealthy man. The idea of motivation, that's what's going on now all over the internet, is how do you motivate people? How do you inspire people for the long term? A lot of people get really excited and motivated and amped up and pump their arms, and then they're back to the same old habits. And I guess that's kind of where I excelled. I was already a type A. I was already a motivated guy. I had a paper route when I was 8, and I worked at 7-Eleven when I was 12, and slinging pizzas when I was 15, and did construction to put myself through college. I've always worked.
Yeah.
You know, it's always been something that I've tried to do, and I've always kind of analyzed things and tried to figure out how to do them better. I'm OCD. That's probably the core of what my problem is, you know, is that I always think there's improvements that can be made, and I'll, you know, turn over every rock to try and find that. And then as an OCD type of individual, I'm big on lists.
Yep.
And, you know, I
And
sent
you
you
told me
lists.
about that. Yep, absolutely.
Check, here's what you need to do every day.
Yep.
And then repeat that the next day, and repeat it the next day. And I hammered on it in terms of sleep and hydration and nutrition and all the components that went into the diet. I have a checklist, a daily checklist. And I've always done that, you know, in everything that I've ever done in my life, is that I've made lists and I just operate off of those. And it can be pretty obsessive, there's no question.
Yeah.
I think that bodybuilding and powerlifting throughout my life has been a great way for me to not become an over-anxious, you know, pill-popping, stressed-out individual, was because I was organized, and I was, things were planned, and I had goals, and I had, you know, every single day it was ding, 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 ding. And it doesn't sound very exciting, but it's extremely effective. And you've always been extremely disciplined and tried to cross your T's, dot your I's. Yeah. And, you know, people often ask me, you know, what can you do for a guy like, you know, a Hafthor or a Shaw? These guys are already some of the best athletes in the world. You're a 4-time world's strongest man before, you know, I ever talked to you. And it's not glamorous. Yeah. What you found is I dug around and tried to find little things, whether or not you had a CPAP or whether or not you were salting your meals, or, you know, just little things that we put in there. You know, how do I handle you guys at the Arnold last year? I flew out there in advance and I flipped burgers. Yeah, because that was the most important thing that could be done for you at that time. And it's interesting, more recently I spent a week in Chicago with George Lockhart, who handles all the weight cuts for the UFC guys.
I bet that was interesting.
It was interesting because, you know, you'd think that would be a glamorous job. He's in there rubbing elbows with all the UFC fighters, and there's all the cameras and all the other stuff. He's in a war room with a dozen other people in one small, tiny hotel room that he, you know, had to flip the beds up out of the way, and he had paper all over the walls, and he had every athlete written down, and when they ate last, and what they ate, and what they weighed, and that went like that all week long.
Crazy.
And it was logistics. It was, you know, behind the scenes, like we said, every single meal. People saw the video of Matt Wenning and I going to Costco, and with that huge carts full of refrigerators and Foreman grills and rice cookers and food, and planning out every single meal every hour. And we talked today about the thermos and how important that is to travel and have those meals ready. And Nick Best came up to Canada and saw you on your game with your Foreman grill, with your rice cooker, with all your food, and he was like, damn. Yeah. And he came back and he called me up right away. He's like, Stan, because I need some help. And there was no magic to it. He just needed help getting organized and planning and making sure he had what he needed. And even in Manila, we had called ahead, found somebody that could create all of that for you. Have the Foreman grill and the rice cooker and the room and all of those things that you needed. The massage therapist to work on you between events or daily. So all of that is really, I tell people I'm not his trainer, I'm his mom.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so I don't know how that's got from me back to you, but really, if I can pinpoint anything in terms of what my success, the reason for my success is because I'm a devil with the details. Yeah. And I just blast away every single day with my checklist. And it's the cumulative effect of all those little things over an extended period of time, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, and decades that you've been training. That makes you successful.
I think first and foremost, you're absolutely right with the list. I mean, to be fair, I thought I was pretty detailed, you know, with things. And I think a lot about what I do, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, what's going to give me the best effect, what's going to give me the best return, you know, when it comes to training and everything else that goes into it. And I think I've kind of got that reputation in the sport as, you know, just thinking about everything. You know, like covering every detail. If there's a better way to do something, I'm going to figure it out before anybody else. You know that, and I've got.
That's why you flew to Hawaii to work with Ode Haugen to handle the particular stone that you'd be working with. Yeah. That's why I bought the same bars that Mark Bell was going to use in his competition and the same monolift to have them in my garage. So. you pre-plan like that.
Yeah.
And that's why, remember, I was just trying to look up on my phone here that huge list that we had before the Arnold and before the
unbelievable.
Manila show, and who was going to handle everything, your wife or me or you, were you going to take it with you, or were we going to buy it there? We had all that checked off, weeks before you ever left.
Well, I show up. I mean, I used to show up with a lot of luggage.
Yeah.
Now I show up with even more.
Yeah.
I mean, but people, I plan for every scenario.
Yeah.
Right. And even more so now, I have everything covered. So I've got, if anything's going to go wrong or I need something to change or whatever, like I don't want to be searching for it. And it's amazing once you and I started talking how that changed even more.
Yeah.
Because I was already packing a lot, and then I had to throw on the extra bag,
right.
and make sure that the food was covered. The food during travel got better. Everything just kind of got better. But it was all the questions that you asked me, the little stuff.
Yeah.
It was just the little stuff. It wasn't, how are you going to get your squat better or your deadlift better? It was, like you said, salting this, or are you, what supplements, or the vitamin D, or the walks, or, anything else that I'm adding into my daily regimen to make me constantly better. And the sleep. I mean, sleep is something that's so underrated.
And I told you to sleep in the other room.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of the athletes I work with, their wives hate me because that's one of the first things I'm like, dude, you cannot. If her alarm goes off at 5 a.m., you're losing your stage 4 sleep in the most critical period for recovery, or with the kids. And we both know I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. You just had a baby.
Yep.
It's very hard to manage. The last 30 days before a competition, I'm like, dude, you gotta sleep in the other room.
Yeah.
Or hire someone.
Yeah.
To come watch the baby overnight. Look at the cost-benefit ratio of that. We just talked recently about what's the cost of landing somewhere and buying a new rice cooker, $40, and buying a new Foreman grill, $50, and a rolling cooler, for $30. Add that up as compared to eating at restaurants and getting vegetable oil and pissing out your ass for 3 days. And
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. And so I just try and let's look at the cost-benefit ratio of that. What would it cost you to get somebody to come in for the last at least few weeks and help out, whether it was a relative or whether it was a for-hire individual so you could just get your sleep. It's that important. And I know in our industry that folks are tight on money, and those are hard decisions to make, but black plastic for the window, a set of these to keep the noise away, turn the air conditioner down just a little bit so the temperature's right and you're not waking up hot and sweaty. I mean, these are the little teeny details that we've worked through. So we're 2 months ahead of you going to Dubai, and we had a huge conversation about the food. How are we going to manage that situation? What are you going to take with you? What are you going to have when you're there? So it's constant.
It's all got to be planned, and it's amazing. I was, I think, blown away. I've always kind of been blown away at the guys that I compete with, that they don't plan better. And they show up and they just kind of fly by the seat of their pants. And
Room service, pizza.
And it's not that I necessarily did it that way before, because I always planned ahead and everybody was like, oh, well, if I need something, I know Brian's probably going to have it or whatever, But now it's got even more anal to the point that I've got it covered even more. But, at the end of the day, you put so much into it, so much training, so much sacrifice, so much, dedication, it's constant work. That when you miss out on these details, it's like it's
a dramatic effect on performance.
Terrible.
Look what Matthew Walker talked about on the Joe Rogan show, is about a 30% decrease in performance as a result of missing 2 hours of sleep the night before an event. So
that's
every single night, and the cumulative effect of doing that consistently can dramatically. I've always said that the training, the sports performance is just a side effect. You're going to get bigger, stronger, faster as a side effect, just naturally, from improving your insulin sensitivity and getting your meals right and getting your sleep right and getting your hydration right.
It's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. Then this becomes what it's always been to us from the get-go, fun, because every time you come to the gym, there's PRs, and you just feel like an animal, and you didn't need a pre-workout, caffeine dose to do it.
Sure.
And you recover faster, so you can train better. All of those things, I think, are just a result. A manifestation, all of the performance benefits are a manifestation of all the stuff that you put in outside the gym.
Yeah. And it really, I think once, for me, I've always been pretty regimented anyway, but I think once you implement that, it's not it's not hard. And I think that a lot of times people may listen to this and say, wow, that's ridiculous. Like you're planning food and you're planning this and it's so hard and whatever. But I'll tell you what, it feels pretty dang good. Like you mentioned, Nick, you know, we were just filming a pilot for a TV show, but I'll tell you what, I could open up my bag at any point in time and have a warm meal ready to go. And all those guys are just sitting there drooling, looking at me saying, God, I'm hungry. Like, when are they going to feed us?
And they're going to end up with meatballs or a Subway.
Yeah, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
And then they feel like shit.
They don't even know what they're going to eat next. And I'm literally just rolling around with the bag, ready to go at all times. And it was just, did it take some planning? Of course. Did I have to get up? And I had a Foreman grill in my room, and I had my bison there to cook, and I had to get up probably a little bit earlier than the guys did, and I prepped my food fresh every day and had the rice ready to go, and but it was worth it.
100%.
100% worth it, and I felt great. I was in the middle of nowhere, but I had all my food with me, and that's like you said. Nick was talking to me, and I think it's just something that
a light bulb went off in his head, because he came back and he's like, look, dude, he goes, when I saw that, I realized that I need to get my planning better. And God bless Nick. I mean, amazing at his age to be that strong. Throughout his career, I just know historically with his previous job that when he would go compete, they wouldn't give him any days off. He would fly a red eye in to land on a Friday morning and compete Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's overcome all the obstacles.
100%.
And if he gets, I think look at him now. He just squatted like an 881 or an 885, and he's going to go for 900 at 50 freaking years old.
That's incredible, yeah.
And he's getting his ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And he's performing even better now than he did 10 years ago, which is phenomenal. I posted a picture on my Instagram recently of my bag opened up at the airport, and I had 6 of those thermos in there. I took a 16-hour trip to the UK. And when I left the house in the morning, I knew I had enough meals to get me all the way to the UK. Even when I was waiting for my bags to come off the airplane in the UK, I was sitting eating a Monster Mash.
That's great.
And I had planned all that in advance, so I knew when I would have them. And then I had shipped frozen meals in my checked luggage there. So when I got up the next morning, I washed out my thermos, and I heated up all of my meals that I needed to in the microwave, because I stayed at a hotel with a microwave. Plan that ahead, right?
Yeah.
And a refrigerator. And I popped meals into the thermos for my trip home. I had 6 more meals to get back.
That's great.
So I plan the whole thing and take all the food that I need to make sure that the whole, that I'm always satisfied. It's not just, and I don't even compete anymore.
Yeah. But you feel good.
I feel amazing. I tell people all the time, my immune system's bulletproof. I travel all over the world. Almost every weekend I'm on a plane, and I'm shaking hands with lots and lots of people and close talking, and they're spitting in my face. And I've got kids bringing home sniffles from school and all that stuff. I am bulletproof. I haven't had a cold in 2.5 years. I missed one workout with a little head cold, and the next day I was fine.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the big things is I want my athletes to be healthy. I don't want them to get sick, because that obviously significantly impairs training. And as you get closer to a competition, you get more and more exposed to the potential to get sick, because you're doing more and more loading.
Yeah.
Your body's under so much stress that you need all of your ducks in a row, the sleep, the eat, the hydration, the potassium, the micronutrients, the sodium, to keep you healthy. And you've noticed too that, historically, we would get sniffles every 6 or 8 weeks in this business.
Yeah, and it's funny you touch on the health, because I think that that's something that's very important. And a lot of times I think that goes by the wayside, unfortunately, with powerlifters or strongmen.
Win at all costs.
Or bodybuilders, even though they look healthy, they're not really under the surface, not really healthy. And I think that that's been a big thing for me. It was pretty incredible this year, not only to go through some of the testing that I went through at the Arnold, but also with my doctor. The blood work, my blood pressure.
Your AST, ALT had come down.
Everything.
And this is right around competition. Don't throw anybody under the bus here. We know that we're taxing ourselves pretty hard at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I noticed, and this was true of everyone whose blood tests I saw that competed recently, is is that the day after the meet is when they run, the day after the Arnold is when they run the blood test, and the creatinine levels were through the roof because the blood test wasn't reading the kidneys in that case, it was reading the myoglobin breakdown from the muscle tissue breakdown.
And
you guys are deadlifting 1,000 pounds and the next day taking a blood test, and most doctors would just freak out. But I get this question a lot from people. Hey, Stan, my liver enzymes elevated or my creatinine's elevated. I'm like, did you work out yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I worked out the day before the blood test.
Yeah,
and so I send them an article that explains the science behind that and why they shouldn't be alarmed and to test it again after having 72 to 96 hours off.
Yeah.
And they'd see a significant difference. It'd be normalized.
Yeah.
So some caution there.
So I got one question from one of the guys that I posted up. Let me just pull it up here. It's from... It was from Adam Dirks, who competed at World's Strongest Man. He's kind of a guy that's trying to kind of climb the ranks, if you will.
Gotcha.
And he was asking if, and he talked to me about this a little bit at World's Strongest Man, but he just wanted me to ask. He said, "Hey Brian, you and I talked about it at World's Strongest Man, but ask Stan what his thoughts are on someone coming up in the pro circuit, trying to gain weight and be as strong as possible. Is the vertical diet the best route? I mean, you won 4 titles without the diet. What would you say?"
Yeah, I just think it's ultimately you do end up as Thor experienced and as you experienced, you do end up with some fatty liver, with some insulin resistance, with some of those which, downstream you end up with just tolerating the higher blood pressure, tolerating feeling like shit all the time, the diarrhea, everything else. There's an easier way, and you could probably get there even faster.
Sure.
If you weren't battling the insulin resistance and you did get a CPAP and you did get, remember your blood test, your vitamin D3 was 25.
Terrible.
Yeah. And that very much compromises your immune system and your insulin sensitivity. So remedied that. And your delayed onset muscle soreness is worse. Your bones and aching in joints when you don't have the D3 in there. So, I mean, I've done dirty bulk. That's kind of how I learned this lesson.
Yeah.
And I was pretty successful, competing on dirty bulks.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes, I was miserable.
Yeah.
And so, and my health was compromised. And so I ended up having a lot of these peaks and valleys where you'd need a long rest period after a big competition. You weren't consistently on your game.
Sure.
And I just think that the progression becomes more linear when you pay attention to all those minor details like we just talked about today and is in the diet.
So as long as I would say, I mean, probably, for him, because he's probably trying to gain weight, put on, another quality, probably, I would say probably 20 to 30 pounds is something like he's going to need to put on. And
just pound the monster mash, get the sodium in there, pay attention to the potassium so your blood pressure doesn't rise during the time. The 10-minute walks are hugely important. I know in our history it was don't run if you could walk, don't stand if you can sit, and don't stay awake if you can sleep.
Yeah.
But those walks aren't intended to be yoga or cardio, and if I'm not trying to knock anybody, but they're intended to increase insulin sensitivity and improve digestion.
Yeah.
So we do them for a very specific reason. And we know with our training that even if you're insulin resistant, the mTOR pathway allows you to get glycogen into the muscle in the absence of the insulin key. And so that's kind of helped us along the way, but let's maximize that. Let's utilize that to our advantage. And that's why the movement becomes so important. So I think there's a lot of benefits that he can have and a lot of struggle he can avoid in the process.
There was
And his joints is another huge thing. Along the way, there's a lot of those tendinitis, elbows, knees, etc., problems that are aggravated by the poor nutrition. And so he'll find that his joints will survive much longer and much healthier and allow him to have more good quality training sessions.
Well, that's a huge point. I mean, the longevity, that's something I know for me, I tried to learn early, and I had conversations with like Mark Philippi. He was still competing when I was getting in, but it was like him and Carl Gillingham and those type of guys that had been in the sport for a long time. Yeah. Those were the guys that I wanted to have conversations with because I wanted to not necessarily make the same mistakes if they felt like they made mistakes in their career. Yeah. Like what lessons did they learn? Yeah. Right. And that was very important to me to talk to those guys and to try to learn as much as I could from them and to have the longevity, so that I wasn't looking back and saying like, man, I really shouldn't have done this or I shouldn't have done that. And, I think it's very important. And I know that I've talked to Ed Cohn a little bit about it. And I think competing too much is a problem, and obviously having the diet to go along with the the smart training and not competing too much, not beating yourself up, because the sport of strongman, the weights have only got bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so there's got to be a fine line, of course, of getting stronger, but at the same time allowing your body to recover from that stress, and not pushing it too hard too often.
And that's why I talked about in my rant, if you want to be healthy, don't compete.
Hey.
And the whole point of the rant is that you need to do everything you can behind the scenes to counteract the damage that you're doing, because none of what you do is healthy.
Yeah.
And so that's why all of those little details matter, and they probably wouldn't beat themselves up as hard if they paid attention to. Maybe we talked about those 3-hour training sessions might dig too deep a hole to come out of.
Yeah.
How frequently you compete certainly is of a concern as well. But if you're recovering, part of it we talked about the intra-workout nutrition. If you're getting adequate sodium and carbohydrates while you're training, you minimize muscle damage, which means you're going to recover faster. Yeah. And all of those things play in. Just a little thing like an intra-workout drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've talked a lot about whether it's a post-workout or intra-workout, but just the carbs and salt training will drastically reduce your DOMs.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and drive more nutrients into your muscles while the mTOR pathways are activated, while the blood is pulsing through your body and bringing all those nutrients in. You might be healing while you're breaking things down.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a way to look at it.
So here's a good one. So this is for Stan, the Alexandre Fortin. Question for Stan. You have been a pro bodybuilder, a pro strongman, a world record holder.
Never a pro strongman.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I'll take it. I mean, if he said it, it's good. Yeah. I don't correct people when it's positive.
A world record.
Squatted 1,000, sure.
Yeah. A world record powerlifter, a successful businessman. What is something you still want to accomplish that you haven't done?
I've got kids now. All I want to do is just see them be successful and safe and smart, and that's the big thing now. I don't have any personal goals there. I'm giving away my Hummer, the Win My Whip competition.
That's amazing.
I don't need a fancy car, and I've downsized my living so I can invest more time and energy into my family. I get to walk my daughter to school every morning. That's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
When I do seminars, typically I leave Friday afternoon and I get home Sunday afternoon. I miss one day with my kids, Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm most focused on making sure that they're getting the best education and that they're.
So being a good dad is what you want to accomplish.
That's huge. I mean, everyone wants their kids to be safe and successful.
Absolutely.
And so that's the biggie now. I don't really have any personal aspirations for myself. I still am very involved in. We just started the new business, obviously, with the vertical diet and the vertical meals, and that's had a huge. Very successful launch. We've done over 30,000 meals in the first 8 weeks, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's because they taste good.
Oh,
they're
so good.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We were talking today about how many free meals people have given us over the years, and how you give them to your family, and then eventually to the dog.
Yeah.
Because they taste terrible. They really, really do. And so, but I'm always going to be that type A guy, but my focus isn't on myself. I don't have any aspiration to own a different home or to have a different car, and it's kids now.
It's neat to hear you say that. I mean, I think that just in talking to you today, even in our conversations, I mean, I 100% know that it's not like you're sitting around and resting. You're constantly working on other stuff, but it's not. And I think that for you, you're going to have to do that. Because it would be the same for me. Like I couldn't just stop pushing myself to do something else, but at the same time I can completely understand, because now having kids myself, it's a different perspective.
Yeah. Everything you do for them now, not for yourself.
Yeah. And I certainly still have goals that I still want to accomplish, but at the same time it's, you can shift gears. As a dad, I think you have to be able to shift gears and make that priority time for the kids.
And I did a video where I talked about why I'm a hypocrite, because at the time I was competing, I was so selfish. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a mortgage. I had the resources and the time available, and I could fly down and train with Flex and over to train with Mark Bell. But I've found now that I can get a lot. I think we kind of overdo we overestimate what's needed to perform at that level because we become obsessive about it. And I found now that I can maintain a significant amount of good health and strength and conditioning with a much less investment into my training. But I'm very organized, obviously, because we all the stuff we just talked about. And so, I'm on point all the time, and I'm organized. But I'm writing the Vertical Diet 3.0 that's going to be an update. I'm writing the book, The Vertical Diet, that's going to be, I'm hoping to work a deal with Victory Publishing here that did Kelly Starrett's book, The Supple Leopard, and did the Paleo Solution. Really hoping to close a deal with those guys, and so we can get the book out early next year. Working on the vertical coaching. My goal really is to get more people to be able to implement this plan on the front lines to help people improve their lives, improve their health, not just always about pro athletes, but about people who have blood pressure problems or have blood sugar problems or diabetics, etc. And give them, and working hard on an app that they can use to implement those things with their people, the checklists, the daily checklists, and the app helps them through that. So there's a lot of fun things that I'm working on that are of interest to me that I hope to implement. But,
sure. So you're staying busy. I mean, it's not
sure.
like you don't. Yeah. It's not like you're just kicking your feet up and you don't have anything to be ambitious about. Yeah. I mean, it's just that you've accomplished so much in your life, and I think it's pretty cool to hear that you're in a comfortable spot where that's the life that you get to lead because you've created that for yourself. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, that's something that they don't understand. They because there had to be a point in time, and I know it because you said it too, but that you were grinding and that you made sacrifices.
Absolutely.
A lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, no question.
And people, I think that's a lot of times what people discount, and don't think about, because they look at you now and say, like this guy asking the question, successful in this, and this, but they don't realize like that path was not easy.
No, and that was never the goal really necessarily. Yeah. That was the daily checklists that manifested themselves in that goal. Like I talk about nutrition and hydration and sleep making you a better athlete just as a side effect. And so what we find out is that when you focus on the goal, you're much less successful. When you focus on enjoying the process and creating a simple, sustainable process, day by day, your checklist and stuff, but that has to be enjoyable. That can't be, punishing. And I had my rant on stress for success where I talked about the times that I had to learn that lesson personally on more than one occasion when I was burning the candle at both ends and not sleeping as much and not going to the gym and eating at McDonald's or, delivery food at my desk, and how horrible I felt. I did start to experience anxiety and stress and poor body composition and all those kinds of things. And, when I got back to the fundamentals, understood the importance, I started sleeping better, eating a little better, exercising regularly. All of a sudden, I was performing much, much better at work and became more successful as a result. So when somebody asks me about stress, I don't try and find a way to get rid of stress, because you're not going to be successful without engaging and overcoming stress. That's just life. But if you can only bench 200 and somebody puts 300 on the bar, that's going to be pretty stressful. But if you bench 400 and somebody puts 300 on the bar, you're going to kick its ass. And that's the way I look at having myself prepared for the fight. I bring my helmet and pads to the game.
Absolutely.
I got my sleep, I got my nutrition, I got my hydration, game on.
Yeah.
And I can handle that stress.
It's funny, a lot of times when we're sitting up here, talking about, and we, obviously mentioned, with me competing, and winning World's Strongest Man multiple times, and, all the success that you've had in bodybuilding and powerlifting and that, I think that a lot of times, quote unquote normal people, they maybe look at this or listen to this and say, okay, yeah, you guys are regimented and that's just what you do, whatever. But, going to work, if somebody gets up to have a good day, right? If they could just plan ahead to have a good day and say, okay, well, I know where my next meal's coming from because I have it with me. Instead of, I'm stuck at my desk and I don't know when I'm going to eat, so I'll get some fast food. And it's such a negative spiral. And the people that I've talked to, and it's amazing how sometimes people interpret for their own life what I say or what you say. Maybe it doesn't have to be a top level, best of the best professional athlete. It can just be a day-to-day normal person that says, hey, I'm going to implement this. make a positive change in my life and change my life for the better.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's probably the neat part, you know, for me is and I know you have to get a crazy amount of messages. I see you post them all the time, stories.
Yeah, all day long, yeah.
How thankful people are that they found this and that it's changed their life. And, you know, and it's just this, it's such simple things.
It really is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not it's not like an earth shattering,
Right.
oh my God, it's just kind of planning ahead when you get up. Hey, let's make the sleep a little bit better. Let's make the food plan so you know where the food's coming from.
Yeah.
You know, all these little things, the details of your day.
Almost like little hacks, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like I talk about with the thermos, I used to run around the airport trying to pay the lady at Starbucks $5 to heat up my plastic Tupperware. And I'm like, there's got to be a better solution than this.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I stumbled
Genius,
across
the
it, but my
thermos
grandfather was using thermos when he was headed to the rail yard, you know, 80 years ago.
Yeah.
They were glass lined then, and they would break all the time, and you could shake them. So I mean, just some simple little, you know, $20 hack like that made an enormous difference in my day. So I kind of look at my day now and try and think, well, how do I solve some of these things that are taking up my time? I don't like having a lot of cars because then I got to wash them. That takes up my time.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works now.
Is that
I don't
why you're
want,
getting rid of the Hummer?
Yeah, I don't want my wife planting a whole bunch of flowers in the backyard because somebody's got to water them.
It makes
I don't want a
sense,
dog because then I got to go clean up after it and take it to the vet. And I mean, it's really, really selfish in that regard. But what I try and do is find out, how do I want to spend my time? And then I understand there are going to be sacrifices. I've said many times that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So I select a few things that I want to do that I think are going to make my life better, and I try and stay focused on those. And I can't do everything, and I try and create more time for myself. I've been through the position where I owned the monstrous house and the Rolls Royce that I was out trying to wax every time before I could drive it. And maintaining that house and the gutters and the little ponds and the frickin' koi that used to get eaten by the varmints that were running around, having to trap them and take them to somewhere. I've done all of that.
It sounds exhausting.
You just create work for yourself. It's like you're on a treadmill all the time. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be on the treadmill.
Sure.
You know, and I say the same things to people who start businesses in two regards. One, when you start a business, don't encumber yourself with a significant amount of debt because it's very, very hard to deal with that kind of stress. And by that I mean, signing a mortgage on your home, or making a big cash outlay. Start small, out of the trunk of your car. That's how I started most of my successful businesses. And then on an ongoing basis, don't incur a lot of recurring expenses. Everyone wants to go out and rent a facility. Well, there's a monthly mortgage cost, and then you got to hire employees. Well, there's 50% of your controllable operating expenses is usually staff, and so not to get too far off the rails here, but be cautious about what you're committing yourself to because it's going to take time and money, and it's going to take away from your freedom.
Yeah. You almost get married to those things.
You do get married to it,
and then it's a constant battle.
And that's true with competing too. I've said before, you become a victim of your own circumstance because if you want to compete at this level, you are required to get 8 hours of sleep or more and a nap every afternoon and to get this many calories of this type. And it sets you up with this whole list of obligations that in the absence of doing those things, your performance is going to suffer and you're not going to be able to compete at that level. So that kind of thing isn't permanent. That's a goal that you strive for. And you guys, you're not going to deadlift 1,000 pounds every month.
No.
You can't. That you have to come down off of that, and work back up towards that kind of thing. And so people have to understand. I just talked to a guy this morning who was just grilling himself all the time and was worried why he wasn't able to continue to lift his maximum weights every week. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. None of us do that. We schedule this a couple months in advance.
I think social media is very, very bad.
Very bad. Larry fucked it up for all of us.
Way to go, Larry.
He's setting world records every frickin' weekend, One day he's 500 for 2 on the incline. A week later, he's 500 for 5. A week later, 600. It's like, fuck.
Every video that you post, it's funny especially when you're a professional strongman or powerlifter or whatever, people expect to see a new world record, or they expect, and it's like, well, whoa, wait a minute, you're lifting a normal weight? What the hell is that? Even though the normal weights in training have to happen to build up to those
And the
monster
most
weight.
disciplined guys have the most success long term because they aren't trying to set an Instagram PR every weekend. And no knock on Larry, that kid could probably do that for years. And,
Yeah.
but not everybody's Larry.
No, of course.
Of
course.
People always ask me, well, Ronnie Coleman. I'm like, you're not Ronnie Coleman, man. You got to start, slowly building yourself up. Be the best you can be.
Well, and that's exactly it. It's maximizing yourself, but it's using some of those videos and that type of stuff for inspiration,
sure,
or whatever. But it's tough in today's world, the comparisons, because you're making a comparison constantly, and even from a competitive standpoint, when I first got into the sport, it was not nearly like now. You didn't know. Yeah. I mean, my main rival for all of those years was Adrunas Savickas, and I didn't know what the hell he was doing with training.
Sure.
Right? And a lot of times, most of the time, I actually didn't post anything because there was really not a platform to post. Yeah. So I was training in silence. He was training in silence. And then you'd meet up at the contest and say, okay, who's been working all winter?
Right.
Let's see who can, and you'd have it out of the contest. And now it's much different because you kind of, the guys put more stuff out with their lifting, and you can kind of see who's progressing, and it makes it more fun for the fans. It makes it more fun for the competitors too. But I think you have to take it all in stride.
Yeah.
Somebody like Larry, you bring him up. I really want to. We've talked about doing some stuff together, so hopefully we can make that happen here in the future.
Yeah, those things are epic.
Yeah.
And it's true across the board. In business, you've got these guys posting on Instagram every day with their Ferraris and the Gary V's of the world, or having all this extraordinary success and traveling around. And you start measuring yourself against some of the best people in the world, who you just have to do the best you can do consistently. Again, you're looking at the end game.
Yeah.
It's going to be really difficult to get there. It's going to be really hard to stay motivated, because every morning you're going to get up and you're going to see Simeon Panda's physique and wonder why that's not you. And you're going to see Larry incline pressing 600 and wondering why that's not you. And you just need to worry about you.
Yeah.
And worry about your list and your goals, and enjoy the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the take home, man, is you gotta stay in your lane. You gotta be happy, with yourself. And if, certainly having aspirations is a damn good thing, and not being, not being comfortable with I guess, for lack of a better term, normal.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be normal. I'm sure you don't want to be normal, and we're both not normal. And I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I feel like you're pretty comfortable with, you want to stand out. You want to be different. I think I definitely do, Yeah. And it's something where you've created that. And through creating that now and all of that success that you've had, honestly, and you probably can't even imagine how many lives that you've touched and changed for the better now. And that has to make you feel pretty good too.
Absolutely. It's one of the most rewarding things about what I do now as a kind of a coach, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Is that I'm just trying to give people information that'll help make their lives better. And so I keep going back to the fundamentals, simple, sensible, and sustainable. I just want people to employ some sort of plan that's achievable and that they can implement, that they enjoy, because that's, at the end of the day, I really loved what I did when I was training for powerlifting and bodybuilding. I enjoyed it, and it shouldn't be a grind that way. Yeah. And you're passionate about what you do, and it doesn't have, not everybody's going to be a Brian Shaw.
Sure.
And it's just, you have to pick what your talent is and then pursue that and engage yourself with those people who are successful and learn from them. I mean, God knows I've spent, and still spend, lots of time, and I gave a seminar at Charles Poliquin's gym. That's why I'm here in the Denver area. He was down in Colorado Springs. I came 2 days early so I could see Milo Sarkev. I attended his entire day seminar. And then John Meadows, I attended his entire day seminar with my notepad like everybody else, learning great. From these people. And I went down and attended, not all that long ago, Dave Palumbo's Guru seminar. So I'm constantly learning still from people. And then when I work with someone like you, it's a collaboration, and I learn from you, and we work together, and the whole process I'm still learning. And I don't ever expect to be the source of all this great information. Like I said, we reached out to Dr. Sandra Godek recently, and there's other people we employ
Yeah.
At any given time, Eddie Cohn has been very helpful. Charles Poliquin is right at your back door.
Yep.
So, you bring in all of the resources that are available, and I'm hoping that people who don't have the kind of time and money and exposure and relationships that I have can benefit from the information that I gave them. And like you said, there's 100 reference articles. Some of it's peer-reviewed published research, some of it's just very good articles by experts in the industry, and some of it's short video clips to help give you the confidence that you're on the right path, and so that you can move forward. And you've watched and read a lot of those. Not everybody does. They ask me the questions. They're right there in the Vertical Diet download, and I'm like, dude, that's on page 7.
Right.
I send them the same video, but I understand they don't have the time.
Sure.
These people have families, they have jobs, they don't have the time that I have to do all this reading and meet all these people and watch all of these videos, and
Sure.
And so I'm trying to provide for them the information that I've been able to glean from what I think are the best resources in the industry.
Yeah, it's been awesome, man.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good. I mean, I'm sure we could keep going and going.
Yeah.
And going.
That's the problem with being passionate about this stuff.
Yes,
Is you just go on and on.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here, man, and thank you for taking the time. Tell people where they obviously can find you in a lot of different areas. Tell people where they can research that, or they want to go buy the diet, like all that
Everything's at stanefferding.com is my website. Theverticaldiet.com is also my website. Same with Instagram, at @StanEfferding, @TheVerticalDiet. And so all that's accessible for them there. And even Stan Efferding at Yahoo is my email, and DMs. I get 100 a day, and I do my best to at least put a few words, if not attach an article to send back, if
great.
and a link to buy my Vertical Diet that goes with my advice if you haven't got it already. So those are the big things, and that's the way to find me.
Awesome, man. So I'm actually one of the exciting things is I'm teaming up with Stan now to do SHAWSTRENGTH meals.
Yeah.
As part of the Vertical Diet, since I've tasted them, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
So
we're coming out with the world's strongest meal.
The world's strongest
meal. I think
meal.
this is the first public announcement. I haven't said anything about it. It's going to be 1,000+ calorie meal. Nobody in the industry is doing that. Your cost per calorie will be the cheapest with us, and that stuff tastes amazing.
Yeah, I can. You've teased me with that now a couple times, and so this is a public announcement. I wasn't sure if you were going to say that or not.
You're the first to hear. Yeah, that's on the horizon. Probably another week or two, we'll actually have that out on the market. The world's strongest meal. You could feed your whole family with it if you need to.
That's great.
Or one meal for Brian.
Yeah.
6 more of those, and you'd just about be to lunchtime.
That's awesome. So if we'll try to post a link up for the like SHAWSTRENGTH meals, and obviously you can find Stan, follow him for sure, and definitely appreciate you being here, my man. And hopefully we'll get to do some more fun stuff in the future. Thank you guys for checking it out.